In this video, we're going to be going over a really fun PvE DPS build for New World. This build utilizes the Rapier and the Spear, and we're going to be utilizing the Grace side of the tree versus the Blood side of the tree. If you're interested in some Blood builds for the Rapier for PvE DPS, I do have a couple of those. I'll make sure to link those down in the description below. So let's start off by looking at the mastery trees for this build. For the Rapier, we're going to be running Tondo, we're going to be running Flurry, and then we're going to be running Evade. You could most definitely switch out Tondo for Flourish and Finish, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But for this build, we're going to be using these three abilities. You are mostly going to be using the Evade ability in order to deal DPS. This is going to be your main DPS ability, and then you're going to be using Flurry to stack some bleeds and get some additional damage, and then you're just going to be throwing in Tondo every now and then for some bleeds on the boss or on the mobs, just for some additional dot damage on those enemies. And then for Evade, we are going to upgrade this all the way. The second upgrade is going to give you a really nice cooldown reduction, which is very important to the build. And then we're going to upgrade it fully in order to gain the stamina. And then we're going to take momentum on this tree. This is going to give us 30% increased damage on the next light attack or heavy attack after performing an ability. And we're going to be spamming Evade quite a lot, so this is pretty nice. And then for Flurry, we're also going to upgrade this fully in order to get the bleed for the last hit on the Flurry. Then for Tondo, we're only going to upgrade it down to the and again perk so we can save this last point to put over here on the Grace side of the tree so we can get the momentum passive or the momentum ultimate. So this is the setup that I found myself really enjoying. I did try to use Flourish and Finish to stack it with Flurry. It works out pretty nice. And in all honesty, using Flourish and Finish probably will increase your DPS a little bit more. But I just ended up liking this rotation a little bit better. So this is what I went with. However, if you wanted to switch out Tondo for Flourish and Finish, basically what you would do is you would adjust a couple of your passives to the left side of the tree. And you would push this all the way down to Bloody End. And then what this allows you to do is use Evade for your main DPS. And then you'll use Flurry and stack a couple of bleeds, 2 or 3 stacks, and then you can use Flourish and Finish to get some big burst damage in there. I ultimately ended up just not having as much fun using that build, so I switched over to Tondo, and I just kind of ended up spamming Evade and then used Flurry for the bleed to stack those and some additional damage, and then use Tondo in between in order to stack some additional bleed stacks for the dot damage. Again, I think you would probably get more DPS if you went this route, but I just had more fun with this, so that's why I went this way. So now let's take a look at the Spear side of the tree. For the Spear in this particular build, you're using this really more as utility than for DPS. This is just gonna be your back bar weapon. You're gonna use this for CC, you're gonna use it for the Ren from Perforate, and then you're gonna use it for the Skewer. You are definitely going to want to take Enfeebling Skewer. That makes this ability really strong, but of course you're gonna bump this all the way down to the bottom to get the bleed duration increase on Skewer, and then you're gonna fully upgrade Perforate in order to get the Rend and then the Weaken that comes along with that. So you're now gonna have Skewer as well as Impactful Strikes to weaken your target with the Enfeebling Skewer. It's gonna be very nice. You're gonna be able to weaken targets pretty good, and then you're gonna have Sweep, and I only upgrade this down to Tenacious Sweep to get the grit. A whole lot of people like to take Coup de Grace, and then they also take Bleeding Sweep along with it to get the additional damage there. I have never been a big fan of the Coup de Grace. It just locks you into an animation. I would much rather just perform the sweep, get the CC, and then switch back over to my Rapier and DPS with that versus getting the additional damage from the Coup de Grace. That may be a mistake in terms of DPS, but I just don't like that ability. I never have, so I don't upgrade to Coup de Grace. I just use this. More of a personal preference thing. A lot of you guys I know like that, so you could 100% upgrade to Coup de Grace and then take something like Merciless Strength if you wanted to increase your damage for the knockdown targets. This is just personal preference. This is what I like, and so this is what I use. And then of course the rest of the passives in the tree are just going to be used to enhance damage and some cooldown reduction, and then we're going to take Exploited Weakness in order to deal the 10% bonus damage for each debuff on the target. So now let's take a look at the weapons that we're going to be using for this build. We're going to be using the Rapier and the Spear, and for the Rapier we're using Angry Earth Bane, Omnidirectional Evade, and Keenly Empowered. I just had this Rapier laying around, so I was able to use it. I would replace Omnidirectional Evade with something like Vicious or Rogue, so it'd be Angry Earth Bane, Vicious or Rogue, and then Keenly Empowered. And having the Omnidirectional Evade on the weapon isn't too terrible. However, I would probably put this on the armor and then replace that with one of the other perks, Vicious or Rogue. But nonetheless, it's pretty good. We ended up using it. It worked out fine, and it was a lot of fun to use. And then for the Spear, the Angry Earth Exterminator is also a spear that I had laying around. It was really one of the only Angry Earth spears that I had. I thought I had a lot more, but unfortunately this was it. So Angry Earth Bane, Keen, Vicious, it's not terrible, but it's not exactly what you would want. If you are trying to get a really good spear shooting for Biss, or at least if you wanted to get a 2-perk spear, you would really want like Bane and Enfeebling Skewer, or if you're using Coup de Grace, you could go with Bleeding Sweep as well on your spear. I prefer to take Enfeebling Skewer, so it looks something like Bane, Rogue, or Vicious, and then Enfeebling Skewer. To me, that would be a Biss spear. That's what I'd be shooting for. And all of the pieces of gear that I'm running, including jewelry, have come from drops. The Angry Earth Exterminator comes from Garden of Genesis. This Rapier that I have also came from Garden of Genesis, and then all of the armor that I'm wearing also came from Garden of Genesis. So we're wearing a Freedom Refreshing Angry Earth Ward helmet. We have on Blight Resistance Angry Earth Ward Invigorated, Freedom Refreshing Angry Earth Ward gloves, Freedom Refreshing Angry Earth Ward pants, and then we have on Enfeebling Skewer, Angry Earth Ward, and Invigorated boots. And then of course we are in the light armor category with the medium chest. And if I were shooting for full bis here, I would most definitely want to get Leeching Flurry. That's something that I'm missing out on this build. If I had that on this build, I would be good to go, but unfortunately I don't have it, so I've got to get a piece with Leeching Flurry on there. But the 3 weapon perks you're going to want to be shooting for would be Omnidirectional Evade, Leeching Flurry, and then of course Enfeebling Skewer. And if you can get Enfeebling Skewer on your spear, I think that's even better, but I have it on my armor, so that's what we went with for this particular build. And then for your other perks that you're shooting for, you would want Angry Earth Ward, Refreshing, and then your third perk can be kind of a flex after you get your other weapon perks on there. And then if we take a look at our jewelry, we have on a Purified Nature Protection and Health Amulet. This is just one I had laying around. It has Constitution on it as well. I wouldn't recommend getting Constitution on your gear because then you're a little bit limited whenever you're trying to bump your Constitution down to do more DPS. So on your gear specifically, I would put the other attributes on there. In my case, it's going to be Dexterity and Intelligence for the attribute split, but this is what I had, so this is what I used, and I ended up just running like 50 con most of the time with this particular build. But if I were looking for bis on this particular piece of jewelry, I would just switch out Purify for probably Refreshing, so it looks something like Nature Protection or whatever protection you need for the particular mutation you're running, Health, and then Refreshing. And then for the ring, we're going to be using Heart of Aviva. This can be farmed in Brimstone Sands from chests. This has Leeching, Thrust Damage, and Bloodletting. It's an incredibly good ring for this particular build. Both of the weapons that I have deal thrust damage, the rapier and the spear, so this works incredibly well. I don't think it's going to get much better than this, so this would be just a ring you'd want to go farm out. Highly recommend getting the Heart of Aviva. And then for the earring, we have the Molten Earring, and if I remember correctly, the Molten Earring comes out of the Empyrean Forge, and I believe it's like mutation level 6 or 7 plus, so you have to be pretty high mutation level for the Empyrean Forge to get this particular earring. But if you're shooting for an earring, you would want to get something like Refreshing Toast, Purifying Toast, and Beloved on here. If I were going with the 2-perker, I would probably go with like Beloved and Refreshing Toast, or Beloved and Purifying Toast would be fine as well. That's what I would shoot for the 2-perker on this one. And then of course, ideally you wouldn't want to have Constitution on here either. You'd want to have a different attribute, one of your damage dealing attributes, but a little Constitution in your build is not going to be terrible. It just reduces the amount of flexibility you have if you're trying to push all the way down to 5 con at some point. And then the Heartrune, I was just using the Cunning Heartrune of Grasping Vines for a little bit of additional CC. We were running Genesis. This kind of helped clear ads on the Caretaker phase. But as I always mention in all of my other build videos, your Heartrune is really going to be situational to what you're doing. If you're in doubt and you're just running DPS, you can always just switch over and run Detonate. I think that's perfectly fine. But your Heartrune is just going to be a situational type of thing. Whatever your teammates are running and what your team needs, that's going to be the Heartrune you're going to want to slot. Or again, if you're in doubt, just run a damaging Heartrune so you can pump out more DPS for your team. And then as for the gems go, I like to run all opals in my gear, and then I run just the elemental gem in my amulet along with the elemental protection of whatever mutation type I am running. To me, I find this still to be just fine even after the fortified changes. A lot of people like to run full on elemental gems in their gear, and that's fine too. I just prefer to go this way. It's just much easier for me. And if you do this and you find yourself dying, you can obviously switch these out, or you can just pump your Constitution up a little bit so you don't have to deal with switching gems. And I have a full video on this. If you guys are interested, I'll make sure to link that down in the description below. But that's what I prefer to run. I run opals. We run one elemental along with the elemental protection on the amulet. And then as far as weapons go, for this build, I found myself running elemental gems. A lot of times I'll run opals in my build, but I found myself not dodging as much with this build. So we just threw elemental gems in here. But elemental gems, an opal, or a diamond, pick your poison. I think any of those will work. It just depends on the team you're running with. Diamond, you just want to be at full health, so make sure you're running with a really good healer or a good team that knows what to do to top you off all the time. But I just chose elemental gems for this build. It worked out just fine. Now let's talk about how you're going to utilize this build just a little bit. Whenever you're opening up on your mobs, if you're not fighting a boss, a lot of trash mobs or whatever, you can open up with sweep, and then you can go into your skewer to weaken, and then you can go into your perforate to apply your rend and your weaken, or the other way around. It doesn't matter. Sweep into perforate and then into skewer. Just apply all of your debuffs at the beginning of the fight so you can get the bonuses for those. Then you're going to switch over to your rapier and you're going to be pumping out a lot of damage. You're going to be using the evade tree. Basically, you're just going to be holding down the W key and then pressing your evade button and then light attacking your hard out. So you're going to be pressing a whole lot of buttons at once. And then in between, every now and then, you're going to want to throw in a flurry. The flurry is going to deal some damage and it's going to heal you up if you have Leeching Flurry on there, which I highly recommend getting on your gear. I unfortunately don't have it. I really need it for this build, but you can use flurry to stack up some heals whenever you're in a pinch or whenever you're low. And then you can also stack your bleeds with flurry, which is quite nice for that additional dot damage. And then I also throw a Tondo in there. So usually I'll start the fight with the Tondo to stack the bleed, and then I'll roll into a flurry and then start evading. You're just going to just spam your evade a whole lot, and then whenever you get windows, you're going to want to use your flurry and then your tondo, and then you just want to make sure you keep up your other debuffs from your spear. That's kind of the rotation. You want to pump your debuffs out, and then you're going to use evade for massive damage. That's going to be where most of your DPS is going to come from, and then you're just going to work in flurry and tondo for the extra dot damage they apply and the extra heal that you are going to receive. Again, this probably isn't the most optimal, because I think the most optimal would be to replace tondo with flourish and finish, and then to stack bleeds with your flurry and then flourish and finish, and then to utilize evade for massive damage. I just really enjoyed this way a little bit better, so again, that's why I'm running it this way. But that's how you're going to play this. It is incredibly fun. It is very fast paced. You have to pay attention to your rotation all the time. You're going to be spamming evade a whole lot, so you just make sure you're paying attention to what's going on. Make sure you pay attention to your cooldowns. Make sure your weakens are always up, and then utilize your sweep whenever you need to apply some CC. You can knock down a lot of mobs and then go right into your rotation. This build is incredibly fun. I really enjoy fast-paced builds like this. I have fallen in love with the Rapier for PvE purposes. It has been a really fun weapon to use. I used it both for the blood tree and this grace side of the tree. Now for this particular build, it's super fun just because it's a lot more fast-paced than other builds that I typically run. That's going to do it for this one, boys and girls. Thank you guys so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. Highly recommend trying out this build if you haven't already. It is an incredibly fun DPS build. It pumps out a bunch of damage, and I've just been having a blast running it. But thank you guys for watching. I do truly appreciate it. If you enjoy this video, enjoy New World content, please make sure to like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate that as well. And of course, we stream over on twitch.tv/BDLG every Monday through Friday. I am potentially going to start streaming a little bit over here on YouTube as well to see how things work over here. I would like to do a little bit of experimenting with that, so hopefully we'll see you there whenever we decide to do that as well. I'll keep you guys posted. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you again. We'll see you in the next one.